when we are actually going through anxiety, as I mentioned above, there is a certain physiological response in our body. What I mean by that is like there is a change in our breath pace, then there's a certain tightness in the body or certain tingling sensations in the body, and we kind of become more prone to this subtle physiological changes that's happening in our body at that time. So through practices, especially practices such as mindfulness and all, which are focused on working with your breath and sensations, and to some extent also some yogic practices such as certain pranayama, or even to some form of some other yoga practices, they all can actually help. And in other system, there's also like qigong and other simple practices people can always do, which what they're actually doing is that they directly address our thinking patterns. So scientists actually say that when people have certain neural pathways, certain ways of thinking, even though they're getting old, those can be changed. They can be, it is called as rewiring of the brain. And so this aspect of changing our thought patterns, which is what it is essentially, comes from when we undertake certain new kind of, we tell the body to start with that to respond in different ways or to not panic at that. So what is actually happening is that people who are sometimes a little, this is another way to look at who is prone to anxiety more, right? Or rather who is actually also able to come out faster from anxieties, is those who have a certain amount of sensitivity to it. They have a certain amount of self-reflexivity, in that sense that they realize that something's happening wrong, or physiologically, emotionally, they know something is happening wrong. And because they don't like that feeling, and or rather they fear that this is the same thing that has happened in the past, they tend to react second time for that. And so this is also like what happens, that narration that goes on in our mind when some situations happen. Like for example, you see a snake, or you see a tiger in a jungle, and if you're alone, you're bound to physiologically react, because that's your natural instinct of the body to look after yourself. But now if you react the same way at looking at your boss, your spouse, or some personality or some person, then that kind of reaction, there's something there's a malfunction, because here you should be intelligent enough to say, no, this person cannot harm me the same way that that snake can harm me, right? But no, our body and mind doesn't believe that, and so it starts responding. And then all the narrative that goes on in our mind makes the matter more complex. So when you work with certain just very simple practices like that, like what you can call as mindfulness or yogic practices, you start changing the way your body and mind reacts. And this is what the scientists say, there are certain cellular memory, there are certain cellular imprints. So you change those cellular imprints in your physiology. Now the second approach within this meditative approach is a more contemplative, and this is again this is more again for those who are a little more intellectually or inclined people can actually pick it up faster. And this is actually to question that source of faith in a much more subtle way. You try to look at your mind state and try to kind of question what has brought about this mind state. Is that what has happened? Is it legitimate? What is my belief system because of which this might be happening? For example, if I actually have a complete belief that all I am is this body, that all that I ever will be is upon my death, that is the end of me, there is nothing more to me than this body, and then in that case, then safeguarding this body becomes a top priority. and it also becomes a top concern. So every little thing that happens to the body is a concern for you. I'm not saying you should not take care of the body, but our belief system has to be evolved enough to understand. And so we start with that certain understanding, and then we inquire, what am I carrying? What do I believe in? Why do I react in a certain way?